That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about You People, the directorial debut of Kenya Barris, which Netflix is releasing January 27th, 2023.
You said directorial debut?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
For a feature film?
For a feature film.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Mm-hmm. Previously directed for Netflix, the limited series Black AF, and of course has written a whole lot of very notable series like Blackish and Grownish, and films like The Shaft rehash and Girls Trip, and I think was credited on that Robert Zemeckis redo of The Witches.
I thought this movie was okay.
I think I maybe had too high of expectations for it.
Yeah, it feels... To me, it feels dated. Like, this could have been an episode of a sitcom from, like, the early 2000s.
Sure.
The subject matter with, like, this interracial couple and sort of all the... You know, like... We just tell the basic story. So it's about Jonah Hill. He's this guy in his 30s.
Ezra.
Who is a broker. He lives in West LA. He's living that life. When one day he is getting into an Uber and mistakenly gets into the car of Lauren London. Amira. And of course she's like, you know, at first she panics, like, why is this strange man in my car? But then he explains, and then they kind of miraculously hit it off. And then we get a montage of them falling in love. So of course they have to meet each other's parents. Jonah Hill's parents are played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus and David Duchovny. Mm-hmm. And they are happy for their son to have found someone because they seem a little disappointed in him. It's important to know Jonah Hill's character has a podcast with his best friend about the culture.
Mm-hmm. Mo, played by Sam Joy.
Who I'm familiar with as a stand-up comedian.
Yes.
And things go okay. His parents are very much like, you know, this is not what we were expecting for our son, but it's great. And they make a lot of comments that are kind of like, okay.
Like they've never spoken to a black person before.
But they seem well-intentioned.
They do. Yeah.
Then, of course, Jonah has to meet Amira's parents, who are played by Eddie Murphy and Nia Long. And they are Muslim, but it sounds like, or the joke is that he hasn't been Muslim that long, and he's very, like, strict about it now.
Changed his name from Woody to Akbar, and she is now Fatima.
And Amira's parents, these two are very unreasonable when it comes to... There's just no depth to why they hate him beyond he's white. But it's the parents' awkwardness with each other's fiancés that causes the two to decide to not get married. So they break up. But then one day, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, separate from Eddie Murphy, are both listening to Jonah's podcast, and they realize that maybe they made a mistake. So they call each other and set up this plan to have Jonah and Lauren meet up. Mm-hmm. And they also have planned a full wedding, like on the same day. So they're supposed to meet at like 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and then they're supposed to fall back in love and agree to get married. And then there's a full wedding ready for them.
Well, because they never fell out of love. Yeah, there's a lot that's contingent upon...
And that's the end. They get married. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have so many notes.
Well, let's get through those.
I thought the opening... So first of all, what do I like? I think Jonah Hill does a really good job.
He co-wrote it. Mm-hmm.
And Julia Louis-Dreyfus and David Duchovny are really funny. In fact, I think those three are the best part of the movie, and I kind of wish the movie would have focused on this Jewish family trying to navigate a change in the sort of dynamic of their family and what they saw for their son. But when we bring in Eddie Murphy and Nia Long, then it takes a turn that I think cheapens the story.
Well, they are given no room to be human, really. They're very one-note and superficial. And I think that why Julia Louis-Dreyfus plays so well is she's allowed to be seen as this woman that's misinformed but well-intentioned. So as awkward and cringy as it is to watch her, I understand what she's trying to do. I don't understand what they're trying to do.
Because I understand what it would be like to have, like you have black parents and their black child is about to enter a relationship with someone who isn't black. And there are a lot of potential ramifications for that and a lot of things to be concerned about. So it's very valid that they would be concerned. But this movie is not setting it up that way. It's setting them up like they're just unreasonable and ridiculous. And someone who doesn't appreciate that these parents would have valid concerns would watch this movie and just think like, oh, they're like these crazy Muslims. I don't know. It just gives no depth to why they have an aversion to Jonah Hill's character. Something else I feel like, I know Jonah Hill's on record, like in an interview, getting mad that someone brought up his appearance.
In first press around Superbad.
So I'm not going to do that, but the movie does joke about him looking like a young Hulk Hogan. And I don't even think he looks that good. I'm just going to say it, he looks bad enough that I feel like someone needed to explain to me how Lauren London is falling for him.
Yeah, well, also that they don't really have any sexual,
they have no chemistry.
They have no sexual or romantic chemistry, and how the romance is handled is very quick. Kind of a montage of cutesy interactions that I never buy them as a couple.
And after they buy the house, his plan is to quit being a broker because he wants to be a full-time podcaster. And we don't really get a sense of this podcast and how it's doing until the end when we see them in like a real studio. So clearly they've come up. But because they don't have any chemistry and they don't seem like they match, and we can get into it, but like the conversations they're having after they've been together a while and decided to get married, it just doesn't, none of it makes sense to me.
None of it makes sense based on the parameters of the screenplay, and one of them is that Ezra has this podcast about the culture, and his best bud is this black woman, that he would not know how to at least try to circumvent what Eddie Murphy is dishing out. Like I feel like he would be able to, not stand toe to toe per se, but be able to figure out how to navigate that better.
I'm just very confused how a woman who has parents as militant as hers are, and who ultimately does confront Julia Louis-Dreyfus to tell her, like, you treat me like a toy. You just see me as a black person, and that's all you fixate on. But I'm like a person. I thought someone who can articulate that and has such an awareness wouldn't get this far along in a relationship with this man and not, like,
Articulate
suss these things out before you pull everyone's families
Well, and
together.
also both of these people, why did you not get your parents together at all? I think that's what never really works in a lot of films like this. All this time has passed, you're about to get married, and he still hasn't pulled his mom aside or her dad aside and said, like, look, this is how it's going to be.
Because each time they meet each other's parents, it's like they go in cold. And it just does not make sense for two people who seem to be talking about these issues or thinking about them enough. That this should be easy to get through. I don't know. But anyway, going through my notes, I thought the opening where Jonah Hill's at the church, I guess that's a synagogue, I thought that was a really good opening. Like him complaining to his lesbian sister, and then his mom and dad are there and they're all arguing.
And Grandma, Rhea Perlman.
Again, I think that this movie should have just been that Jewish family.
Sure.
Because I thought they worked the best, and their awkwardness about this interracial relationship to me felt more fresh. It still felt dated, like maybe a sitcom from 2013.
Oh, this goes back to Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, really.
No, but yes, you're right. But I think like the way Eddie Murphy and Nia Long are playing it, I mean, this could have been a movie from the late 90s.
Yeah, well, or even the 70s when we're talking about them suddenly deciding to be Muslim and talking about Louis Farrakhan, you know.
We should talk about that, yeah.
The reference points I think this would have been a really interesting film to come out in the 70s, but it feels like the in-laws mixed with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and Meet the Parents.
So when Jonah and Lauren meet in her Mini Cooper, I thought that scene was crunchy.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because it's very like, I mean, she's attacking him like, oh, because I'm a black woman and you're a white man and you have which these are very valid observations. But again, for a woman who's that observant and aware, I just can't believe that she's not foreshadowing like how these interactions might play out. So then to think about the movie from, like after watching it and thinking about these scenes, they just don't make sense.
Yeah, a lot of it doesn't make sense.
Also, for her to fall for a man like Jonah Hill, I just feel like her reaction to him getting to her car wouldn't have been like that either.
No.
Right?
Right.
If you find someone attractive and they bump into you or accidentally do some shit, because it all depends on how you feel about the person, right?
Yeah. Well, usually, I would assume that's the man she's going to marry, that she would have felt maybe also kind of flirtatious and let her guard down a
Right. The
little
way
sooner
she
than
was
does.
acting towards him when she first saw him, she wouldn't pee on him if he was on fire. So
Right.
I don't understand how they just. And then at the peak of their relationship, after they bought their house and everything's great, their chemistry, she's still treating him like. The way she talks to him and the way she, like, her body language is as if he were her coworker who, like, is nice to her. And so she's being polite. Yeah.
Again, it's almost like I felt the same way for the white girl that Sidney Poitier has to get hooked up with, and guess who's coming to get her? Catherine Houghton, who's kind of like this, hippy dippy white girl. It's like that's who you chose. Well, he's this miraculous person with 18 billion degrees, and I feel a little bit of that here. There's an imbalance that isn't ever reached.
I do think Amira meeting Jonah's parents, that was kind of funny because we meet the sister who's a lesbian and she's attracted to Amira. So, like, that's funny. Then, like, David Duchovny I thought was so good because he keeps speaking of dated, he keeps talking about how much he likes Exhibit, like the West Coast rapper with that show Pimp My Ride. And I thought that worked well. Then at a point he gets on the piano and starts singing Ordinary People by oh God, I cannot forget his name. Chrissy Teigen's husband?
Oh, John Legend.
John Legend. I thought that was really funny. And then Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character just constantly putting her foot in her mouth. It works so well.
I love the one where they say they're going to get, when they're deciding on the wedding, and Nia Long says, brings up in her mom, and she goes, Auntie Mom? And she goes, no, there's no Auntie Mom. Like, there are a couple, like, really good lines. Eddie Murphy being confused about Sam Joy on the plane.
Oh, we should talk about, well, yeah, we should. But then when Jonah meets Amira's parents, I thought that was just so awkward. That felt so dated because they're being, like, unreasonably unreasonable. And then Jonah's going on about having mixed race babies, which is, like, again, their daughter is very fair skinned. So the fact that Eddie's going on about, because when he first walks in,
his first scene where he meets his kids for coffee or
he's
whatever.
going on about there are no dark skinned people in the place. And I thought that was so awkward. Like, I mean, I understand that he's supposed to be ridiculous, but it just.
Well, also, how's that making your daughter feel about herself?
Okay, Jonah seems to have, his character has severe social awkwardness, but it doesn't make sense when it occurs because you have this podcast about the culture and you talk to your best friend who's this very outspoken black lesbian, but then when he's around black people, he seems to not know how to talk, and then when he's with his parents one-on-one, he can sort of articulate he can explain to them why what they're saying is inappropriate. But then when you add an extra person to the room, he just shuts down. None of it matches to me.
No.
But then ultimately when he sticks up to Eddie Murphy, I thought what he was saying made sense, but it felt like a little too late for all that.
Well, what he's saying does make sense. For a person that doesn't have a podcast about the culture with his black best friend, what I've learned from you is that I don't know what it's like to be black in America. That person already knew that by scene 1 in this film. So I don't.
When the two sets of parents meet, Julia comments on Eddie Murphy's hat, but he's wearing a crown that was given to him by the minister Louis Farrakhan. So they're having a conversation about Farrakhan, which I thought went on a little too long. Again, I thought, like, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, her contribution to that bit was more funny.
Yes.
Because she's actually saying, well, he has some thoughts about the Jews that I don't like. I just feel like it misses so many opportunities to I think for a comedy about an interracial relationship in 2023 to not seem stale, I think they needed to really get in there and, like, why does this Jewish family feel awkward with this black woman? Why? I mean, they're in West LA. Like, there's a lot of diversity. They don't seem like racist. They just seem like they live in a bubble. Let's burst that bubble. That'd be a fun movie. Burst this Jewish West LA bubble and bring in this black ass lady. But then it's like she's not particularly. I don't know. I just don't find Amira's presence like that. It seems like they would accept her.
Yes.
Like, she's not some hood girl, I mean, they make a bit about her growing up, I believe, in like Inglewood or something, but it's like, Amira's smart, she's pretty, she's,
Well, I think because it's like, did they not know where Baldwin Hills was?
yeah.
I think is the
I'm saying she's the smart and pretty, like, she seems very palatable to someone like these people. So I don't understand. We need to burst that bubble instead of doing these old bits that just feel so dated. There is Eddie's driving with Jonah Hill in the car, and he's playing that Jay-Z Kanye song N Words in Paris, and he wants to.
he's trying to get him to say.
He's trying to get Jonah to say the lyric, like say the N word.
He's like, who's in Paris? He's like a bunch of pals in Paris.
I thought it was funny, but then it went on a little too long, and then what are we saying here? I mean, is this really a bit about the N word in 2023? Like, I mean, again, it felt dated.
And again, I feel like somebody like this Ezra character would be like, I see what you're trying to do, and say something like, I don't use that word, blah 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 blah.
Because again, with the Jewish family, when Julia Louis-Dreyfus takes Lauren London to the spa to have like a girls' moment, and I thought that seemed a little more fresh because we can see Julia about to like go turn into a Karen, and it's Lauren who has to kind of calm her down, like, this is not what you think it is. Like, they weren't being. So that worked better for me.
Yes, it maybe because we see less representation of that, but
What did you think of the editing?
oh, with all the kind of hazy song things in between.
Yeah.
I didn't love it.
That was a very interesting choice. It felt like a TV show.
Again, well, I mean, that is where Kenya Barris is most well versed, right? I felt like it was unnecessary and wasn't always suggesting a transition. I don't know.
Right. There's a barbershop scene where Eddie takes Jonah to a barbershop that's frequented by Crips,
And
like
he's
wearing blue, and then Jonah's wearing a red sweatshirt, and that felt very dated.
It did. Remember, it also, I was recalling that movie, Our Family Wedding, remember, with the Black and Mexican families, and also kind of this cultural clash that everybody has to get over. And I just feel, it just makes me very thankful to be gay, because being part of that community is like, you can be insulated, but it's so much easier to run into all kinds of intersections where you quickly realize, like, none of this shit matters, and you're gonna fight for what you love.
Dion Cole's in the movie. He's playing like the wedding planner that Eddie and Nia brought on. And I love Dion Cole.
Yeah.
And he has a funny moment because his idea for the wedding is he wants like hood Tron.
I wrote that down too.
Like the movie Tron, but a hood version. And then he has like the costumes with the...
That is... I like the good thing about that scene too, though, is them talking about the different themes and the oblivious Jewish family that's like, oh, I like old Hollywood. Well, what does that mean for somebody that's black? And right away that she can only grasp on, oh, I don't like Gone with the Wind. But it's like, it's all of old Hollywood.
But again, an opportunity to really dig into
to speak to that and say that it's okay to like those old movies, but you have to realize that I might feel this way about watching that.
You mentioned Eddie Murphy misgendering Jonah's friend. What's her name? Sam
Joy,
Joy.
Whose name is Mo in the film, who's very mask presenting.
I mean, you seem to think it was funnier than I did. I kind of...
What was funny was his kid Omar's reaction, because he's like, he asked if Mo, did you know Mo had titties? And he said, yeah, they're on her chest or something. But yeah, you idiot.
I don't know. I can see people not liking it. I didn't think it was like... It wasn't so funny that it was like I felt like it needed to be in there, but...
No, but I think it points out that his also ignorance and kind of homophobia, much like when Jonah Hill's wandering around after church in that scene with an Elliot Gould and all these old people talking, and his reaction playing off of all of them saying really outrageous, terrible things.
Then Eddie takes Jonah to like some street basketball game, but unbeknownst to Eddie, Jonah can play. So that scene was interesting because then Eddie's like live streaming it, which didn't feel like something his character would do, but whatever. Mm-hmm. It just read as kind of corny. Lala is in the movie playing one of Amira's friends. So like there's a scene where they all go, like her bachelorette party. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really awkward.
That was a scene that I think it does a disservice to all the black women in there, because I can't believe that not one of those women felt something for Amira that said like, oh, this should be working for her. This is her bachelorette party. Because the joke is Julie Louis-Dreyfus says something that they all think she's thinking of the N-word, playing some word game. You know.
Well, and then Julia accidentally gets her ring caught in one of the women's hair and yanks off her wig. So then they all get upset and leave. But I agree, like...
Not one of them was like, oh, like an icebreaker, like, I hope you weren't thinking what we think you're thinking.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to get nasty comments, but I just don't like how the black characters are written in this movie. They just all seem so unreasonable, and I think in 2023 we've gotten to a place where we can actually like delve into like why these characters feel uncomfortable around.
I think it's the black characters feel like they're written in shorthand because the makers of this are like they're readily identifiable, but what it does, it sells them short by making them kind of one-dimensional.
I did think it was funny though. Lala's character has a tattoo on her right breast.
That was funny. Yeah.
And Julia Louis-Dreyfus is like, oh, I really love that tattoo. What does it say? And she's like, rest in peace, Tyrone or something. And then she goes, yeah, he was my heart. And then Julia starts saying like, oh, it's interesting you would get a tattoo that you wouldn't have had the tattoo on your left breast where your heart is. And her daughter's like, just shut up.
Just keep those comments to yourself.
But I don't know. I just thought that writing was funny.
And Kim Whitley has 2 scenes.
Yeah, Kim Whitley.
As an auntie that makes a speech. And of course, Mike Epps as Eddie Murphy's brother, who I don't think we've talked about yet.
No, but he's integral because at one point, after Jonah and Lauren London's characters have broken up, one day Mike Epps and Eddie are riding in the car, and Mike forces Eddie to listen to Jonah's podcast. And Mike implies like, I've been listening to it and this guy really is like the real deal. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes Eddie change his mind about him. But
I think by the using the Dion Cole character that way, I think takes away.
You mean Mike Epps?
The Mike Epps character really takes away from where we'd assume maybe Nia Long.
Yeah, because you would presume that the mother would be the one to knock some sense, but this movie doesn't do that. They make them both seem like knuckleheads. Right.
So I think David Duchovny and Nia Long feel very underutilized.
Yeah. I thought the wedding speeches were funny when they finally do have their wedding. I thought. I think when Jonah and Lauren London confront their parents respectively, like each other's parents, I don't know. I'm just let down by this movie, I think. I just feel like it could have been so much more edgy. There are very funny moments, but overall, I just didn't think that these characters matched the situations they're in.
I agree.
And I keep saying what you keep saying. This white guy has a podcast about the culture with a black woman who he talks to all the time. I don't know how he's...
And Amira never references, as you mentioned, the podcast.
And Amira never talks about it. 2 people who have decided to get married, they bought a house together, and they've never had a conversation sussing out any of this. It just all feels so ridiculous.
Well, and also, again, 2 people that are that much in love, that we're supposed to believe are that much in love, can't get it together to be like, it doesn't matter how shitty my parents are being, I'm going to do my best to make them toe the line so that this can work. I don't know. It's just...
This review is way too long. What else would you like to say?
Nothing.
What would you give this movie?
2.5. There were moments I laughed at. Again, it just doesn't feel cohesive in the way that I really wanted it to.
I would give it 2.5 out of 5 as well. Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.